With the end of June comes the end of another blockbuster term at the Supreme Court. In several high-profile cases, the justices ruled on major flashpoints for our nation, from gender ideology to the White House's strategy on economics and immigration. One of the biggest cases concerned President Donald Trump's retaliatory tariffs on nearly every country in the world. The court determined the tariffs exceeded presidential powers. But in two rulings from last week, there were also wins for the administration. Justices paved the way for the administration to remove temporary protected status from hundreds of thousands of Haitian and Syrian nationals in the U.S., as well as turn back asylum seekers before they reach the U.S.-Mexico border. And in perhaps the most closely watched case this term, the Supreme Court rejected President Donald Trump's executive order seeking to end birthright citizenship, a legal principle that guarantees citizenship to babies born in the U.S. The court determined the order was unconstitutional because it contradicted the 14th Amendment, which confers citizenship on anyone, quote, born in the United States and subject to jurisdiction thereof. The decision impacts more than 200,000 babies born in the U.S. each year. The court was nearly split down the middle. 5 justices joined Chief Justice John Roberts in his majority opinion. Brett Kavanaugh agreed with the court's result, but not its reasoning. 3 justices dissented. In his majority opinion, Chief Justice John Roberts writes, citizenship, then and now, was the right to have rights to freely participate in our political community. The framers of the 14th Amendment extended that promise to every free-born person in this land. We keep that promise today. Justice Samuel Alito called the majority decision, quote, a serious mistake in his dissent. The 14th Amendment confers citizenship on only those children who at birth owe allegiance solely to this country. As we continue to unpack the significance of the Supreme Court's immigration ruling this week, our next guest brings a profoundly unique and Catholic perspective to the immigration debate. Paul Hunker is a partner at a Texas law firm that provides legal representation to immigrants on issues ranging from asylum and green card assistance to deportation defense and work visas and other complex immigration issues. Prior to being an immigration attorney, Paul served as the chief counsel for ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement in Dallas. Paul, thanks so much for being with us. Immigration enforcement is one of, if not the most, charged political topics in this country. You have this unique perspective, having defended both the government and the immigrant in this debate. Can you give us your reaction to the Supreme Court's decision to uphold birthright citizenship in the United States?
Yes, I read the majority decision this morning, and I was really inspired. I felt like standing up and singing the national anthem. It was a great defense of citizenship at birth, that in the United States, we're not citizens because we're of a particular race. We're citizens because we're born in the United States. I think it's a great, profound decision affirming a fundamental idea of our nation.
Paul, only about 36 countries in the world offer automatic birthright citizenship, including the United States. From what you have seen firsthand, do you see that this is a right that is often abused by immigrant families? And what is your message to Americans who are concerned by that?
Well, I mean, certainly some people will engage in what's called birth tourism. They may come here and have a child who is a citizen of the United States when that child is born here. But I say this idea of having new U.S. citizens is something profoundly good for our country, that those children can acclimate to the United States and become contributing members of the United States. And frankly, our nation needs more people. Our birth rate is declining, and we really need more people. So we should incentivize and we should support policies that give us more citizens rather than fewer citizens.
The Trump administration did have some immigration Supreme Court victories this term. The court ruled the president has broad, unrestrained authority to end the temporary protected status program, and the court ruled in favor of the government's ability to turn back asylum seekers at the U.S.-Mexico border. Paul, how significant are these rulings, and were you surprised by them?
I was not surprised by those rulings. In principle, temporary protected status is temporary, and the law and the regulations allow the administration to take it away if they follow the law and the regulations to do so. I think there were many ways the administration did not do that, so I was somewhat disappointed in the Supreme Court decision. I believe we do need a strong border, and I disagree with the decision that basically prohibits people from applying for asylum if they enter the United States illegally. I think there's better ways to do that, to consider those asylum applications on the border before those persons are allowed into the United States, adjudicate those decisions quickly. And I think that's the way to do it, to give people their due process rather than denying them due process. And often that denial could send someone back to their country where they could be persecuted or killed on account of their political or religious views.
Well, Paul, on that note, I know you're a practicing Catholic. For Catholics who want both secure borders and a humane immigration system that upholds the dignity of the human person, what are immigration enforcement reforms that you would recommend?
Well, you definitely need a strong border for a number of reasons, and it wasn't simply the Biden administration's fault, but for a number of reasons, the border was crazy under the Biden administration. The numbers of people apprehended were like over 100,000 people were apprehended per month crossing the border, basically turning themselves in to be let into the United States. That has to stop. On the other hand, there are people in the United States that have been here many years, have significant family ties, are contributing to our country. And those people, the Trump administration is seeking to remove those people. And that's very harmful for society. So what we need is a strong border. I believe we need a reform in the law to give people that have been here a long time, that are contributing members to our society, they're not criminals, to give them a pathway to obtain their lawful status. And we need more legal immigration. We need a lot more legal immigration, Catherine. Our country's birth rate isn't high enough. We need people to come in and contribute and support the United States.
Paul, tomorrow on the 4th of July, Pope Leo XIV, our first U.S.-born Pope, will visit the Italian island of Lampedusa, which is seen as Europe's Ellis Island of sorts. It's a gateway for thousands of migrants from Africa and the Middle East to come to Italy and Europe. Our Holy Father is expected to offer comfort and encouragement to those who are there. I'm curious, Paul, as to your reaction about this gesture from our Holy Father, and how significant is it coming from an American Pope?
I think it's very significant. I think, unfortunately, the media often mischaracterizes these things as if the Pope is for open borders. The Pope just says countries should just let people in en masse. And that's what the church is saying. If you read what the Pope is saying, he's talking about that, for example, for people fleeing harm, that it needs to be an international solution, that countries need to get together and decide how these people that are fleeing harm can be protected, and that burden should be shared. So I think it is an important thing that the Pope is doing. I think, unfortunately, including our own administration, that people's rights are being denied. For example, when the Trump administration sent many innocent Venezuelans to a Salvadoran terrorist camp, that the Pope and the Church and our bishops are speaking out against that. And they're speaking out against an indiscriminate detentions and removals. Look, you can protect the border without arresting grandma selling tacos on the street. And I hope that maybe in the second term, or maybe it's going to take a new president, that we could do that. We can protect the border. We can have a safe community. We can remove people that are dangerous, and we can facilitate deserving non-citizens obtaining lawful status.
Paul, we have less than a minute left, but I want to end on this note. Our discussion, we've been talking about immigrant families coming to the United States for the promise of a better life. So as we head into this weekend and celebrations surrounding our country's founding, can you just reflect about what does make our country great today and why the U.S. continues to attract new citizens?
Well, I have friends like from Brazil, and they come here and they say, my kids can play in a park and they're not going to be robbed. And there's safety, there's rule of law. And I think you see that rule of law in this decision yesterday, that at various times in history, the government has exceeded their ability to regulate immigration, and they've taken away rights, and the courts have pushed back on that. And I think that's a great thing about our country, is checks and balances, that we have a judiciary that can check the excesses of Congress or the president.
Paul Hunker, thank you so much for your insight and for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Catherine.